Poi tricks can be a lot of things. They can be beautiful, they can be elegant, they can be complicated, and they can be really difficult. Drex here from Drex Factor Poi, sharing with you the love of poi spinning and flow arts to benefit your body and brain. And today, I am sharing with you my picks for the 5 most difficult poi tricks that I have ever learned. But before we dive in, I just want to give a quick shout out to the friends of the channel. Big thanks to Dark Monk, Fire Mecha, Flow Fests, Flow Toys, Juggling Calling, Pyroterra Light Toys, Spin Balls, and Ultrapoi for helping to make the videos on this channel possible. You can learn more about all of these awesome companies and the work that they're doing to support flow artists like yourself by checking out the links that I have down in the description of this video. And special thanks to the non-business friends of the channel, Lain Mochinsky and Pekha Pekkonen. Thank you both so much for supporting my channel, my work, and my mission. So like, real talk, in the time that I've been spinning poi, there have been tricks that I have learned that came more or less easily, or once I understood the concept, it just came together for me. And there have been some poi tricks that I just chipped away at for months, if not years. And quite frankly, what those tricks were depended quite a lot on where I was in my poi journey. Lots of tricks that I now consider to be relatively easy for me were quite challenging for me back at the beginning of my poi journey. So I wanted to create a list that reflected how I have evolved over time, and I'm sure how many of you all out there do as well. So this list is not going to be an inventory of what I think the 5 hardest poi tricks are out there currently in the world, but really the 5 poi tricks that gave me the most trouble as I was going through my poi journey. After all, difficulty is a really relative thing, and I think it's really important that we recognize how hard it is for people at all stages of their journey to learn new things. So with all that said, I'm going to start this list off with the first poi trick that ever gave me trouble, and what a coincidence, it's also the first poi trick that I ever learned. Number 1, poi reels. Yeah, so this one's still a little bit shameful to me, but when I took my first lesson as a poi spinner, the first thing that my teacher, Paul/Salty, ever tried to teach me was how to do basic together same reels, turning from forwards to reverse and back again. And over the course of a 2-hour lesson, I absolutely failed to wrap my head around this and get it down. Part of what was going on for me is just I thought for some reason that the 2 poi stayed in 2 separate tracks the entire way around. It didn't dawn on me until weeks later that you actually bring the poi together into the same track in order to get them to go back and forth across your body. And I do just want to highlight this one because it nearly ended my poi career before it even started. I was so disappointed in myself not being able to get this one trick at the start that I actually gave up, and I told myself that poi wasn't for me. If not for the timely intervention of another friend who gave me a set of poi as a gift, I don't know that I ever would have picked them back up, and I think a lot of people, including myself, would have missed out on a lot for that. So while this is a trick that I think many of us take for granted, including myself, I also think it's important to highlight just how important this was to my personal evolution. Trick number 2, crossers. Okay, so in those first 2 years when I was spinning poi, I remember picking up a lot of things relatively quickly. You know, once I had a group of people to hang out with and like trade tricks back and forth with, it seemed to go much faster learning. But there was this one trick that I kept seeing that in the back of my mind, I knew this is going to be a major challenge, and I actually avoided it for a couple years for that reason. That trick, of course, is crossers. I first saw my friend Kyle doing this at Confluence Park back in Denver, and somehow I just knew watching it that this move was going to require me taking weeks, if not months worth of work to figure out the basic steps that go into it. Like, it was really clear that regardless of how long an explanation there was for the trick, there was a basic skill at play here that I was going to have to work at for a while. It was going to be new information for my body and a new understanding that I was going to have to integrate into muscle memory. I knew that that work was coming for me, and I just did not want to do it. And then finally, I took the plunge. I spent weeks drilling, spinning the poi with my arms crossed, both forwards and reverse. I drilled turning back and forth between these 2 positions. It took me weeks. It took me months. But you know what? I did finally get it. This was the first trick that I truly had to work for, and it will always occupy a special place in my heart for that reason. Trick number 3, isolation versus horizontal CATEYE. Yeah, so I know there's a massive leap in difficulty between the first two tricks and these latter three tricks, but bear with me here. Horizontal CATEYE versus isolation was probably my first claim to fame as a tech poi spinner. At a time when there were less than a dozen people in the entire world that could do it, I was able to put it together within my first 3 years of spinning. And it's wild to me because while many of the tricks that I found difficult in those first few years of spinning poi have now become more or less commonplace, this is the one that remains super rare and that I see people struggling with more than any other. And I get why, because all of the elements of this trick are incredibly difficult. First up, there's the anti-brid element, which that's a whole thing that people have to train their brains and bodies on. Number two, the isolation. People take months, if not years, to learn how to do clean isolations just in themselves. And finally, the horizontal CATEYE. Literally, the Mount Everest of the CATEYE world, and you're putting all of these pieces together. Yeah, it's not an easy time. And yet, I still think this is one of the coolest looking tricks that I have ever picked up, and one that I still love to pull out to brag on occasion. Trick number 4, the one-handed Mercedes. So, real talk, two poi one hand, like learning how to spin two poi as one meteor, is one of the most frustrating things I've ever picked up in my time spinning poi. It took months upon months of unbelievably frustrating work. And the Mercedes was something I set as a goal for myself very early on in that process. At a time when I was pulling out my hair, even learning how to do basic one-handed weaves and waist straps, this was where I knew I wanted to get to. Like, no lie, I can remember afternoons practicing this where I would get so frustrated that I would literally just beat the poi against the ground. I would spend hours and hours and hours just continually having the poi whack against each other, not being able to figure out how to get the planes where I wanted them to be. And then, magically one day, the pieces came together for me. Okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration. It worked once, and then it took me a while to get it to work again, and then finally it became like second nature. This is now one of my favorite tricks to pull out when I'm in a two poi one hand kind of place, and still to this day, it's one of the most common things I get asked how to teach. Alright, so we are down to our last trick on this list, and that means that I gotta ask a favor of you. If you've been watching this long, it probably means that you're into poi tricks, and guess what? I post lots of videos about those. So if you've been enjoying this video, pretty please give me a subscribe, leave the video a like. It helps out the channel and it helps make sure that you get to see all of my new videos as soon as they get uploaded. And now coming in at number 1, the most recent poi trick I've learned that absolutely drove me crazy with its difficulty is number 1, gunslinger anti-spin flowers. So I first encountered gunslingers years ago when Jonathan Alvarez moved to the Vulcan in Oakland, California. And it was an odd little curiosity, but I didn't really feel a great need to learn the basics of it or even get terribly deep into it either. And then all that changed when Aoi Kondo posted a video of himself performing gunslingers as anti-spin flowers. And instantly, I was not only hooked, but also more than a little bit terrified because I knew I had a lot of catching up to do. And catching up I did, because start to finish in learning how to do this trick, it probably took about like 5 to 6 months worth of work, and at every step of the process, I kept discovering new basic information I needed to train my body on in order to get there. Figuring out how to learn the trick was almost as difficult as learning to do the trick itself. But hey, I think the work was worth it, don't you? This to this day is one of my favorite poi tricks, and quite frankly, probably the single hardest thing that I know how to do at this point. And it's also something that I take immense pride at having stuck with and figured out how to get from beginning to end. So that was my list of the top 5 most difficult poi tricks I have ever learned. What would be on your list? What were the poi tricks that gave you the most trouble as you were getting into your poi journey at all steps of that journey? I'd love to know. Leave me a comment. This video would not be possible were it not for the kind support of all of these lovely people right here. These are my Flow patrons over on Patreon. They and the people listed down in the description help to make this video and all the videos on this channel possible. Thank you all so very much for your very generous support. And if you out there watching are not currently a supporter but you'd like to become one, you can do that by heading on over to patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi and signing up. There's a link to do that down in the description as well as up in the cards if you are watching this video on YouTube. Go take a look at that. Please and thank you. And if you'd like to check out some of the other videos I've done in my series of top 5 poi tricks of various sorts, I will include a link to that playlist down in the description as well as up here on screen if you're watching on YouTube. Also, the YouTube algorithm thinks that you might like this top video here because it is popular amongst my other viewers, so maybe give that a look as well. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to get out and flow today, and I'll see you with a new video real soon. Peace.